welcome to Generation Mingle, where boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and sometimes Gen Alpha sit in the same room and try to survive and have leftovers of the cranberry sauce after all the drama. Today's episode is about Thanksgiving dinner survival. Okay, so I have today a guest with me who have survived plenty of family drama that really qualify for hazardous pay. And her name is Wendy. Welcome, Wendy, to our podcast.
Thank you, B, and thank you for having me. And hazard pay is definitely correct. I've been through boomers with very strict silverware rules, Gen Z cousins making TikToks at the table, and I still haven't recovered, and neither has my entire family, from the time my niece announced that she was vegan midway through the turkey carving. So, yep, lots of hazard pay, lots and lots of Thanksgiving drama.
Well, that's perfect. Someone as Wendy is our perfect guests on our podcast. So I have to say, let's go begin with the boomer, since I have a little bit sprinkle of boomer in my Gen X, and so is Wendy. Wendy, what do you have? Any stories? Because definitely I have some.
No, I don't think there's any one of us that hasn't been through a large family Thanksgiving that doesn't have some stories. And as boomers, I think that we are the kings and queens of the pull me aside and have a conversation. I will never forget the time that my mother, mid-dinner, took me away from the table, pulled me into the kitchen, and wanted to speak to me with concern about the fact that my cousin's new girlfriend was overly obsessed with salad. I mean, I'm not really sure why that was drama on Thanksgiving, but she had a real concern about this young lady and her salad obsession.
Well, I have found out that boomers are seriously kings and queens of the whispers. Okay, I think they invent that, and it's continue. I think all our generation have some of that, but like millennials talking in between each other, the Gen Z recording somewhere quietly in the corner.
Of course. Well, what about you, B? I'm sure that you've got oh yes, remind me, tell me about your turkey touchdown story.
Oh my gosh, seriously. So we do have that beautiful, table set up according to all those boomers, in our family, with the perfect silverware and, the beautiful dishes. Everything is placed where it's supposed to be. God forbid to move, the mashed potatoes in place of the casserole. Everything has to be in the same place that has been for 15 years, okay? And of course, that year, my uncle decided that he's going to be the master carver, that he's the best to carve the turkey. Okay, so we all agree, okay, you go ahead and do it. Grandpa is too old, has his old diagnosis that he cannot stand too long on the table. And here we go, he start, and half of the turkey flying in the lap of my grandmother, okay? So this is why we call him the turkey touchdown. So grandma has been looking at him and said, oh my gosh, this is my son and this is our future. Kids have been laughing around, the dog was most happy licking the grandma's lap. So this is my story. It has been kind of insane, but part of memories that I do have and will have forever.
Yes, you will. Very classic Thanksgiving chaos.
So talking about this, okay, boomer situation, I think that what we thankful with them is that they actually give us some tradition, give us some influence, and like very melancholic stuff that I don't feel like I would like to have dinner somewhere else. I like to be on that table, even that is so strict and we have to eat at that time and this time and the TV blasting, with the football game since in the morning. I still do enjoy the fact that we have family get together in somewhat order with that beautiful tablecloth. What about you, Wendy?
I think you're correct. I think even the silent generation before the boomers began creating a solid transition for us as families, a structure to bring us all together, to sit down, to share the things that matter to us, to share time with each other, even if that time is chaotic and sometimes fraught with more than a little drama.
Well, if boomers listen to us, please drop us a comment, because we really do like your traditions, okay? Gen X, chip in if you're free as well. So, let's go talk here about Gen X now and Thanksgiving. Okay, since we have been really talking over the poor boomers, almost destroyed them and the tradition. So Gen X are really my people. Okay, we are the middle child, and most of the time we're trying to keep it together between the boomers and millennials and Gen X and keep the peace. But we definitely, sometimes need a little bit encouragement, such as a glass of wine.
Ah, yes. When the wine kicks in, we are off to the races. And you know what I've noticed, B, about Gen Xers and Thanksgiving? You are the people that we as boomers aren't quite ready to trust with hosting the dinner, aren't quite ready to trust you with the really intricate parts of Thanksgiving, so you get stuck with things like green bean casserole and pumpkin pie. Have you noticed that?
Yes, I have been always assigned, to the simplest dishes, such as like a green beans casserole, or pumpkin pie or a apple pie, and I have started with that maybe because we as Gen X we didn't put much effort earlier from our youth to learn the recipes and cook. We just always have been invited to our parents, the boomers that run the show, and eventually as they have been overwhelmed, we have been dedicated. Okay, you will do this and you will now do that, and that's how I end up always with those dishes. And is what it is. By the time today I have learned how to cook, but yeah, that was the part. Yeah, until today even they asking me the same thing, can you bring that cake, because that's what we like, and she always does that. Let her do it that. What about you, Wendy?
Well, for me, I always, I'm a boomer, so I'm doing the turkey, I'm doing the big things. But you guys, you in Gen X, you are stuck with the green beans, you're stuck with the pies, always the pie, and generally the pumpkin pies. And then you're just holding it all together at dinner, trying to keep yourself below the level of 3 glasses of wine, even if you already had 3 glasses of wine, laughing a little bit too loud, and then you're rolling your eyes at the boomer speechers, and the boomers are secretly rolling their eyes at you. And then we're kind of secretly hoping that you are the sandwich generation and millennials take over hosting and take over your spot pretty quickly.
Well, we can only hope. I don't know about millennials because I have been, trying to take a, deep dive into what they're doing and how they, really looking into the system that we have already established with the boomers and the dinner. But I think millennials deviating to like order the food and bring the food. That's what I have learned. They're more, accepting the fact that they can go out for dinner versus myself. So I don't know. Do you have any stories, Wendy?
Well, I mean, when you think about millennials and going out for dinner, I remember one Thanksgiving that my children, who are millennials, did talk us into going out for Thanksgiving. And we went to, believe it or not, I think we went to I think it was a hotel for dinner that year. And I have never felt more empty than I did that day, sitting at that table, having a waiter bring me food that I hadn't cooked myself with no leftovers to take home. At least, even whenever you order out and bring food in from some sort of supplier, there are leftovers to have, because I don't know about you, B, but Thanksgiving leftovers are very high on my list.
Well, yes, and this is the part about Thanksgiving dinner, that we do enjoy the fact that afterwards we do have a leftovers. But I have realized that millennials have no interest in that. And I remember one time, a couple of days after our dinner, I visited my kids and I opened the fridge, and I still have seen the leftovers that has been really screaming at me, it's time to go to the garbage can. So I do absolutely see that. But, it's funny thing about millennials, right, with the Gen X that try to teach us different, attitude towards this kind of a life, to not have as much stress. Do you think that as Gen X that we have, separate ourselves from the boomers a little bit?
I think a little bit, maybe not as much as the millennials, but I think that's what happens as we go down through the generations, from generation to generation. Each generation pulls away a little more, become more autonomous in the things that they want to do and what their holiday traditions are, and I think that's a natural progression.
Yeah, I think we have to just, let it go, and all generations just create a little bit space from themselves and their own, kind of a scenario how they want to spend their holidays. Well, let's go talk now about millennials, okay? Dive in deeper in that. Millennials always bring the plant-based meal, right? Something unique. they don't really, realizing that, that dinner has to start exactly at 5 or exactly at 6, however the family does. And in addition to, it's much more important, to still text someone, or do something else, whatever the flow is for them versus sitting already on the table. What do you think, Wendy?
Oh, absolutely. There's a much more relaxed flow to Thanksgiving dinner whenever the millennials are taking over the day, so to speak. I will never forget one Thanksgiving dinner at my sister-in-law's when we were just trying to, as a boomer, I was channeling the millennials, and we were just trying to have a conversation, catch up. We hadn't seen each other for a long time. We didn't live anywhere near each other. But my mother-in-law took offense at that because we weren't on time. We weren't doing things when we had said we were going to do them. So as we were chatting, one of us happened to look off to the side. She'd gone into the kitchen, gotten into all of the dishes, made herself a plate, and went off into the corner and pouted the rest of the day because we were going with the flow, not with the schedule.
You know what? I absolutely agree. But I do have some understanding to that as a Gen X, again, the middle child, right, between generations. And I have to say that truly, millennials do not see or oversee the moments of keeping a little bit more sensitivity to the boomers, to the Gen X about the comments and behavior and reaction. Sometimes the ignorance to, can we sit down to the table? Nobody even listen to them. Even when us Gen X says, okay, it's time for dinner, still you don't have any reactions, right?
Exactly. And when you think about how millennials are in general, they're very go with the flow. They're very likely to move into something that we aren't going to do. So we start into a debate at the table about ethically sourced turkey. Was it free-ranged? Was it, where did it come from? All of those things. And God forbid they get to bring a Friendsgiving dish that they had from another occurrence and completely outshine Grandma's pie.
Right, I have a story on that. Oh my gosh, I can remember that one of our millennials, that person that always talking about the organic stuff, right? And let's go protect animals. Why we eat the turkey? Can we change? Can we do something else? So that person has been assigned to make a stuffing. So here we sit down after the prayers, the turkey is safely this time carved, not flying off the table in grandma's lap. And everybody's dividing, moving around the table, dishes. So everybody has a full plate. Let's go eat. Thank you so much for wonderful food, yada, yada, yada. And here it comes the millennials announcing, well, by the way, that's a new recipe of the stuffing. Well, I use actually tofu. And everybody stops in the tracks. And then one of the Gen X family members says, did you really have to announce that right now?
It's always kind of a competition to see when those things are popped out at the dinner table. My daughter, millennial, goes to her in-laws every Thanksgiving.
Oh.
And she requires gluten-free. But her mother-in-law refuses to do any of her dishes gluten-free. So my poor daughter has to take her own plate of food for the meal, because even the green bean casserole is not gluten-free.
Well, you know what, here is the gap of the generations, but I have to tell you also a little secret. I do have in the family people that will not touch anything, right, that is animals as well, right? So even the stuffing has to have only vegetable, bro, when you make the stuffing, and the gravy has to have a vegetable, bro, only, and you pretend whatever it is with the addition to. But I know somebody in my family that actually doesn't do any of that. Just make that regular stuffing, regular gravy, and we just quietly agree, yeah, that's all organic, yes, it's all plant-based, and nobody knows. What do you think? Is anybody's doing the same trick?
I'm sure that there are. Now, the gluten-free, if you didn't do that, I'm sure you would get caught out for that. But yes, plant-based and organic, that's definitely one that you can skate by.
Yeah, well, I think doing the dinner, sometimes little bit secrets are good like that. So, true about the millennials, right? They are a little bit different. They're trying to sneak a little drink at the earlier time, okay? They not pay much attention to the time frame, and sometimes they forgetting a little bit respect. So millennials, if you want to put a comment in, what do you think about this? Why we seeing you as a little bit disrespectful? Send us an email, start the chat. We would love to hear from you. We're moving out with the Thanksgiving showdown to Generation Z. So, what is Generation Z all about? I really even don't know, Wendy.
Well, Generation Z is all about TikToks and content and the next great thing that's happening. I mean, my Gen Z cousin, she at the Thanksgiving dinner actually made a dance video with the gravy boat. And by the time the meal was over, she had 50,000 views.
You know what? You're absolutely right. I have noticed that. Yeah. I remember. They are rather put in 1 minute quick recipe of 3 ingredients for a Thanksgiving, some side dish on the TikTok versus even care what's going on in the house, right? When they're visiting the grandma, when they are surrounded by millennials, Gen X, and the boomers, they just all to themselves with their headphones on the head and watching whatever's going on Instagram or whatever else going on online. I really disconnect with that generation because all of what I know that the boomers have the stuffing, right? The millennials have, the elaborate meals with tofu, right? The Gen X just follow through, is the mediator in between, the grandpa's football, the grandma in the kitchen, and, the millennials talking about, next exploration of another cafe latte or new leggings coming on the market with the girls, right? But I really don't recognize Gen Z with the Crocs and pink hair and the headphones and just sitting in the chair talking all by themselves, not saying one peep. Did you have noticed that?
I've noticed that, and they're not really connecting, and I think it has a lot to do with the amount of time that they spend on the internet, on video games, focusing on content, focusing on their own social media, and it doesn't really matter to them as much, the personal interaction, because their day-to-day interaction is somewhat disconnected. It's, like I said, it's video games, it's content, it's media. It's watching life through the tiny lens of their phone versus the actual interaction with the people that are with them. So they're literally, you talked about boomers being the king of the whispers. I really think Gen Z is the key of the right in your face roast for those people that really aren't following through with what they believe at the time.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. The looks, right, of the Gen Z, they just like X-raying through your entire body. You even don't know what is going on, why they're looking at you, what's the problem, right? So you're just trying to avoid that conversation. But you know what? To avoid a little bit critic on Gen Z, to not be so hard, I can see that because they are different than we, right? We have went through different processes, steady how we have learned with that electronic. Then the millennials have been thrown into the electronic. Now Gen Z literally mastered them. So that is their life, right? But as we finishing the Gen Z chat and the Thanksgiving dinner with them, that they really don't care what time and what they eat, let's go move in to the latest generation. That this is very unique, the alpha generation, that they sit on that little table and the complete chaos of screams and food fights flying where the cranberry sauce is going on the grandma's blouse. So you have a recent story about Generation A and the dinner tables.
Yes, I absolutely do. I was visiting friends who have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I discovered how absolutely imperative, important, and necessary Alexa is to the success of a meal, be it a regular meal or a Thanksgiving dinner or any holiday dinner, when you have a tiny Gen Alpha in the house. This tiny 2-year-old was demanding attention, demanding something from his father. So his father turns, and this went on for the remainder of my visit. Alexa, play the Peekaboo song. Once the Peekaboo song started, the little guy started dancing around the kitchen and was very happy. As soon as it stopped, there was chaos ensuing. So Daddy turns to Alexa and says, Alexa, play the Peekaboo song. And everything worked just fine.
So I can just imagine that. Yeah, I heard that Adam Madness was, I think, the baby shark or something like that. So it's quite interesting, right? Again, to see all the generation pattern through from boomers to Gen Z and Gen Alpha dancing to, Alexa songs to calm them down, and millennials being distracted, and Gen Z doesn't care, and Gen X is getting frustrated leaving for a glass of wine outside on the patio, and the boomers just rolling their eyes. My goodness. So, on the end of all of it, the precious Thanksgiving dinner. So the boomers bring the tradition, okay? Gen Z has the eye roll and disappearance in the patio with glass of wine. Millennials bring the somewhat therapy and unique dishes with the tofu. And, Gen Z do the TikTok, and the alpha brings the chaos, right?
Absolutely, and when you get them all into the same room, you create a Thanksgiving drama so over the top that it's entirely possible that Gen Z's TikTok could be optioned by Netflix.
So true, right on, Miss Wendy. So, exactly. So, what do you think? Okay, which generation is the most dramatic one? Which generation is most ignorant one? Okay, do you have a uncle that he thinks that he will be be a huge competition on the Food Network since he's cutting the turkey? What the alpha generation performances are on your dinner table with the turkey. So let us know. Put some comments in, okay? And we would love to evaluate that next time and have your comments on our next episode. So, guest, what do you think, Wendy?
Well, I think it's time for the podcast listeners to spill the cranberry sauce, spill the tea. DM us your stories, send us a voicemail, an email, drop a note in the comments. We might read it in a future episode. And remember, every generation has their benefit and their value.
I would love to have you, Wendy, to come back and evaluate all this scenario, because I think that the topic of Thanksgiving drama / dinner, turkey, flying through the dining table and all the other stories that we have been talking about will be worth it to evaluate from your listeners what you think. So, what we have learned, okay, that Thanksgiving is not really about the gratitude or the turkey or the perfect meal or the delicious pie, okay? It's about all the drama that it's turning into, little bit whispering in the kitchen to the tofu and in the middle, of the dinner discussions, and, sometimes the live TikTok accomplished by the Gen Z. So next year, please, do not stress about the food. Don't stress what you're wearing, okay? Just instead of bringing, the intensity, just all of what you need to do, probably just some patience and possibly a helmet, because you never know what's going to be flying across the table, okay? So, because quite frankly, it seems like it's not just the food, but it's just to get together and the drama of the family that we take in. Don't you think, Wendy?
Absolutely.
So, thank you so much, guys, for being amazing listeners. And thank you so much for the stories that I'm, still waiting to come in. Please drop them in. But what I want to say, to all of you, as always, I suggest, please contact your mom, contact your grandma, grandpa, your dad, your sister, your brother. Even when there's a huge grouch, okay? Reach out to those cousins. Reach out to them. Reach out to the grandparents. Okay, reach out to the grandchildren. Even if you don't receive a response, a little hello could go along the way. And who knows, maybe next Thanksgiving, they come into the table and will be spending some time with you. I think we need more of closure between the generation, not only that one time a year, which is Christmas or a Thanksgiving, but to see each other and chat a little bit, to maybe understand better during the Thanksgiving dinner that the millennials appreciate more the boomers, and the Gen X doesn't need to have a more than one wine and roll the eyes through the entire dinner. So until then, may your turkey be tender, okay? Do not fight, because I think we need, again, like I said, more closure. But please keep in mind, if the family do not argue during the dinner, okay, then most likely you guys are not related. Wendy, thank you so much for joining us. That was fun. I appreciate your visit.
It was my pleasure, Bea, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, guys. So please drop those comments, because we want to have Wendy back and just chew on your chaos. Bye for now.